all the participants who have attended this webinar. The NITI Forum is constituted as a part of IKSC initiative of the college and also with the objectives to have a knowledge-based initiative to serve the students and faculty by efficient and accessible administration of knowledge. We have started the NITI Forum from this year with the initiatives of faculty and students. It was taken a good move by the inauguration. It was done by Honorable Mr. Justice Kurian Joseph, former Justice of Supreme Court of India, yesterday only. This is the first lecture series through this NITI Forum, and I hope it will continue further with innovative programs in the days to come. Friends, we have fortunate to have a distinguished professor and speaker. He is with us today. He is going to enlighten us. He is none other than Professor Dr. Madhubhushi Sridhar Acharyalu, Professor of Law, HOD, Bennett University, Noida, UP. Sir is going to enlighten us on the topic Constitutional Governance and Transparency. Sir, on behalf of our college, management, staff and students, and on my own, I extend a hearty welcome to you, sir. I welcome you, sir. I also extend a warm welcome to all the participants. Thank you, one and all. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Now, before we move on to the lecture, I'd like to call upon Ms. Bollamma to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Akshay. A very good evening, all. It brings me great honor to introduce the speaker, Dr. Madhubhushi Sridhar Acharyalu, who will be speaking to us on constitutional governance and transparency. Dr. Madhubhushi Sridhar is an author of 30 books on law and journalism, both in English and Telugu languages. He was the professor of law at National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, University of Law at Hyderabad till 20th November 2013, which he resigned to take up the position of Central Information Commissioner at New Delhi on 22nd November 2013. Dr. Acharyalu wrote 4 books on right to information subject. He was a resource person at training workshops on right to information for the Information Commissioners organized by National Law School of India, Bengaluru, and Center for Good Governance, Hyderabad. He was training different administrative officers, scientists, engineers, and academicians at Administrative Staff College of India, ASCI, Hyderabad on RTI. Some of his popular books are Right to Information Law and Practice, Nirbhaya Act, Legal Language, Law of Expression, and Alternative Dispute Resolution. Professor Sridhar was given Best Teacher Award by Andhra Pradesh government in September 2013. A double postgraduate with LLM and MCJ journalism from Osmania University, Dr. Madhubhushi Sridhar achieved 5 gold medals in all. Dr. Sridhar is presently serving as the professor and head of department, School of Law, Bennett University. It's our privilege to have you amongst us, sir. Once again, I extend a very warm welcome to you. I now request Dr. Madhubhushi Sridhar to take over the session.
Thank you very much. A very good evening to Ellarkum Namaskaralu. And don't expect me to speak further in Kannada because I know only one sentence that I learned just now. Thank you. Okay. I really deem it a privilege to be associated with you. I'm happy to know that your university, your institution is established by a Guru, Jagat Guru. So my pranams to Jagat Guru, the principal, Mr. Nagaraju, and my friend who organized this meeting, and all the participants of the workshop. I'm happy to talk about, happy to talk about to you about the dynamics of transparency and constitutional governance. You know, everybody cherishes an orderly society, a well-conducted behavior of human beings, and a social peace and political development. When I say political development, I don't mean development of political parties. I mean, politically, the country should be developing, peaceful. It should have a perfect administration, and it should secure itself from the external threats and secure the people from internal issues also. This is what is expected of the government of India or government of states to perform. You know, when we were under British rule, struggling for independence, we were facing a confused set of rules of governance. Nobody knows what kind of government we had. It has no interest in public interest. It doesn't have any interest in this nation, doesn't have any interest in progress of this country. Very, very rarely, a few people here and there. By accident, some officers were thought of development of this area. Otherwise, they are interested in looting, exploiting, and taking away the wealth of our country. Nobody was bothered to reciprocate and give something back to the people. Because it was a foreign rule, we also cannot expect it. And we were fighting for independence. And the fighting for independence was based on your exercise of freedom of speech and expression. And when you fought for the freedom, you used the freedom of speech and expression. And then ultimately, when we got the independence in 1947, we have developed a system of constitutional governance in our country. That is the origin of constitutional governance in India. What do you mean by constitutional governance in India? Constitution prescribes you a mechanism, a methodology. A relationship is described, relationship between citizen and the people is described, and your rights, your duties, the responsibilities of the government are delineated in our fantastic administration book, that is Constitution of India. We are supposed to be ruled by Constitution of India, not just by whims and fancies of the rulers. Rulers may say anything, may do anything, but there must be a system they are supposed to follow. So what kind of a system we have developed in our country? We have chosen a parliamentary democracy. What is parliamentary democracy? Those who are studying law will easily understand it. But let me tell you, parliamentary democracy is in contrast to presidential form of democracy, as you see in the United States of America. It depends on the people's representatives coming together and deciding the policy of the country. That is the parliamentary democracy. In presidential form of democracy, the president is not immediately accountable to anything. He is an independent authority. He will have his own team. He will come with the team and he will go with the team. Whereas in Indian style of parliamentary democracy, we force the Prime Minister to choose ministers from the parliament. That is a compelling feature. So he has to take members of parliament into his ministry. That means from parliament, executive emerges. From parliament emerges the executive. And from the council of ministers emerges a leader, that is Prime Minister. And then Prime Minister leading the council of ministers has to advise the president, and president is the head of the nation. This is the structure of our mechanism, of structure and mechanism of our governance. And what is it they do? What is it they are expected to do? Though president is a head of the nation, he has nothing to do on his own. He has to totally depend on the advice of the executive. Why so? Because we believe if you give entire authority to one person, he will definitely turn into dictator. Whether it is a family, society, an association, or apartments welfare society, or a university, or an academic institution, or an assembly, panchayat, municipality, assembly, or parliament of India. Whichever it is, if you give authority to one single person, he will definitely turn into dictator. And we never envisage dictatorship in our country. Democracy is the source of power. I mean, the people are the source of power, and they have to give consent to you being representative. And you have to act on my behalf. Not that I am working as subservient to you. No, that is the constitutional governance. And one more very interesting feature that we are supposed to know is rule of law. That means it is not rule of individuals, but it is ruled by a system, ruled by a mechanism which is agreed upon. Rule according to a policy which is acceptable to several people, majority of the people. So this is our constitution. This is our understanding of governance. This is the constitutional governance. Now, when I say a government elected by the people should take a collective decision, not in isolation, not by an individual, but by a group of people. A single individual should act according to a group of people, which is called Council of Ministry. Single man is called President of India. Then this Council of Ministry, a small group, is expected to be accountable to a bigger house of elected representatives, that is Parliament. And every member of the Parliament is elected by the people, that is the whole lot of public in general. So from the whole lot of public in general, you choose one single person to head the institution, and decision-taking power, decision-making process is distributed among the people. This is constitutional governance. In this form of constitutional governance, what needed is people's participation in governance. People's participation in governance. Imagine an important thing. Okay, Prime Minister is there, Council of Ministers are there, MPs are there. What more you want? People have to go continuously express their opinion, and they should influence upon the government's policymakers to change the policy. I'll give you a latest example. You know, we have a COVID pandemic, unprecedented, unknown, no information about it, no notice. All of a sudden it came. First wave killed some and second wave killed many. And we have developed a vaccine, greatest technological advancement of the civilization of entire universe and India, of course. And we have a policy of distribution of vaccines. And whether that vaccine distribution policy is correct or not is the question. Multiple rates, charges, prices for the same vaccine. 50% of it being purchased by the central government. And all the states are expected to purchase vaccine on their own at a higher cost. And if a private enterprise has to purchase the vaccine, they have to pay something more than what is paid by the company, paid by the central government. Is it not a lopsided policy? Is it not an unequal policy, not in tune with constitutional mechanism and principle of equity and equality? This was the criticism. Whole lot of country rose to the occasion, made scathing criticism of the policy, and everybody was discussing the unjustifiable, unreasonable policy of vaccine distribution in the country. I'm not going to say anything about the reasons behind this policy, but we have to examine the reasonability of the policy, that's all. Whatever may be the reasons behind the policy, I'm not concerned. I'm a person, I'm a possible victim of perhaps the virus. So what do I get to protect myself and protect my family and my colleagues and my social beings? What do I do? This is the question. So when whole country criticized the unconstitutional, unequal, inequitable policy, what happened? The Supreme Court has taken up suo motu, the case for the consideration. Where from Supreme Court has got this power? You may ask. This comes from Constitution of India, which gives judicial review power to independent judiciary. Do you know that our judiciary is independent? Expected to be independent. It is independent. It has to be independent. I'm not saying that it is not independent. Some people may not behave independently. That's a different issue. But overall, judiciary is independent, and that is established once again recently when Supreme Court came down heavily, saying that your policy is not correct. Read Article 1. Do you know what Dhananjay Chandrachud Justice said? Do you know that? He said, read Article 1. Article 1 here, what is this Article 1? Why should anybody read Article 1? He's not saying preamble. He's not saying talking about basic structure of the Constitution. He's talking about Article 1. Do you know what is Article 1? Article 1 says India, that is Bharat. India is the name of the country. Bharat is, some people wanted Bharat, it should be called by Bharat. Bharat means, what is Bharat means? It is a resplendent light which lives always in resplendent light, and it gives light to the society. That is Bharat. So India, that is Bharat, is union of states. This is the first article. One within brackets 1. First subarticle of article 1 says India, that is Bharat, is union of states. What do you mean by union of states? Union of states means center doesn't have its own territory. There is no central territory. Union territories are small pieces here and there, which cannot sail with a bigger territory of a homogeneous culture, but they stand out separately. They need some separate treatment, and at the same time, they cannot have their own assembly and administrator. You imagine Lakshadweep with 65,000 population. What kind of a government you want to have it? Should it be a municipality under Kerala? What it should be? So it is union territory. Fine, it is also in trouble now. That's a different thing. I'll come to you to that at a later point of time. So today, there is no territory for central government. The territories of all states put together is the country, India, Bharat, that is Bharat. So when you have no territory, but territory of states is the territory of the country, think and act on behalf of states. Think and act for the states. They can't purchase, 4 or 5 states have given, opened up notification for global tenders for purchase of Covaxin or any other vaccine to fight, tackle, or combat with the coronavirus. But most of the states did not receive even a single tender. State is not a country. State in India is not a country. State in India is a secondary, subordinate, though we call it equal unit, secondary unit in a 3-tier constitutionally governed society. What are the 3 tiers? Center, provinces, that is states, and the local bodies. So state cannot throw the responsibility on the local body. Come on, you purchase your own vaccine and vaccinate your people. You cannot say that. Similarly, center cannot say that you vaccinate your people, I'm not bothered, but I'll take 50% of the vaccines from these vaccine producing companies at a low rate and I'll export it. You do whatever you want. You die or survive. I'm not bothered. This is not proper. This is not proper because Article 1 says we are a union of states and it reflects federalism. It emphasizes importance of rights of the states, authority of states, sovereign power of the states, status of the states, importance of the states, and democratic status, democratic significance of the states. You can't ignore it. And who said it? Supreme Court said it. Under what law it said it? Because it has judicial review power, it has said it. And according to Article 141, the law declared by the Supreme Court is the law for the entire country. So there are 2 lawgivers, 3 lawgivers in fact. One lawgiver is Parliament. The other lawgiver is judicial precedent, that is such orders given by the Supreme Court, which constitutes law for the entire country. Third is custom. Custom means established practices, cultural practices, which are established over a period of time. They constitute a law and it will work with legal force. So these are the 3 sources of law. So when Supreme Court says that your policy is not correct, you have to read Article 1. And you know what happened next? Central government has to respond, and it responded. Promptly, yes, promptly. And then said, I will give vaccine to entire population of the country. You tell me, sir, how the U-turn of the policy happened? This is the question. How it happened? I'm happy that it has done. I'll give you another example. Kerala government, before elections, has brought an amendment to Police Act to add one section called 113A. According to this section, police can question the criticism, and whoever makes an adverse comment against the government can be arrested and put in jail for 2 or 3 years. This is a very, very draconian new curb on freedom of speech and expression. Of all, Kerala government is doing it. Communists, and they are doing it. Now it is neither Congress nor BJP nor any other party. It is Communist Party, which has some fair reputation of giving good governance in Kerala. It has brought such a draconian amendment. Then Entire country opposed. I myself wrote 4 or 5 articles against. Several people wrote against it, and they say, you're going to curb the freedom of speech and expression. It will be finished if this law is made into an enforceable legislation. We will be finished. Our freedom of speech will be finished, and democracy is seriously affected. Then Kerala Chief Minister has to withdraw that. He has withdrawn it. What I am trying to tell you is the built-up people's opinion changes the policy. And when you change the policy, you are taking part in decision-making process. When people take part in decision-making process, it is called democracy. That is democratic constitutional governance. Now, having come to know and understand how effectively the people's voice will change the policies of the government of India, especially in the crisis times like COVID pandemic. How do you do this? Next question is this: how do you do this? You do this through building up opinion. Opinion, what do you mean by opinion? Good, bad, truth, false, we don't know. We build up an opinion. What kind of opinion? This vaccination policy is not correct. Or the law that going to curb the freedom of speech and expression is not correct. We raise our voices, we criticize, we write, we speak, we release videos, we forward WhatsApp communications, we Twitter, we comment on Facebook, and we do whatnot. We do so much of. So today you have various platforms available, and you can question. You have questioned, and that question has been received. Today, if Citizenship Amendment Act policy is not immediately being implemented, the reason is people's opposition. Today, if farmers' acts, so-called farmers' acts brought into by the central government, if they are not being implemented because they are stayed by the Supreme Court will not stay all of a sudden like that, just like that. It also senses the mood of the people. It collects the feel from the happenings around, and that prolonged protests against the 3 enactments which are supposed to be called as, being described falsely as farmer welfare legislations. What happened? Was stayed and they are not being implemented. Remember the strength of democracy. Remember the strength of opinion of the people. Remember the hope of positive change, even if the government is very bad. So this is the power of democracy. This is the power of common man. I think this is a movie dialogue. This is the power of a common man. Yeah, this is really. Then how do you do all this? That is the question. Next question. You do this if you know it, if you can think about it. What do you think about it? Do you have freedom of thought? My dear students, I hope you agree if I say that you have freedom of thought. And can I say that you have absolute freedom of thought? Do you agree? Is there any limitation on your thinking? Is there any limitation on your dreaming power? Can your father or mother restrict your dreaming ambit? Nobody can restrict. You have absolute freedom, liberty of thought, and you think good things. I wish you do think good things. Think positive things. Think for development. Think for civilization. Think for knowledge improvement. Think for scientific research, questioning, investigation. Don't accept anything blindly. Don't do the worship, individual worship. If you want to really worship somebody, worship your God. If you want to be devotee, be devoted to God or something, some conviction, not to the individuals. Be devotees of individuals. Respect individuals. Like them, dislike them, vote for them, or vote them out of the government if they don't do perfectly. Don't sell your vote. That is, of course, your activity. But you should know, you should think, you should express, you should communicate, you should build up an opinion, and your opinion will grow in such a manner that will alter the mind of a ruler, even if he's a dictator, even if he has 367 MPs support, even if there is no opposition, even if everybody follows him like a devotee blindly, he also has to change his policy. There is no way. And that is the beauty of the democracy. So you are expected to exercise your freedom of thought before you express. Am I right? Don't express without thinking. Express only after thinking. Then what do you think about? Do you have any idea? What should we think about? Should we read newspapers? Should we go on listening to TV channels 24/7? Or should you go on watching social media, YouTubes, WhatsApp, and spend all your time wasting your time? People say you're wasting your time. What should we do? The answer is you have right to know. Answer is your right to information. And without knowing and without being informed, what do you think? What do you do? Nothing. You know, when Right to Information Act was introduced in 2005, people did not ask for information in good number. Employees asked for more information. Employees, what employees? Government employees, NGOs, clerks, officers. Those who are working in government, they asked for some more information. Do you know why? Have you ever thought of why only those employees have raised the question and asked for information? Because they know what happens in government and you do not know. So you must ask for information. You will ask for information only when you know what is happening in the government. That is why the government is expected to disclose the information. Disclosure of information and right to information, together called transparency. Together called transparency. Right to Information Act has two main chapters. I mean, two main parts, significant parts. One significant part says the public authority, the government, or any authority which has some relation with the public, or it works in public, works for public, expects public to receive its services. It has to give information on its own. Suo motu. You know suo motu? Suo motu, perhaps everybody knows, because though it's a Latin expression, very profusely used. We adopted it into our language, and we have been so, what is it I can say, take liberties with it. We write wrong spellings also. Suo motu, some what nonsense spellings are given. So suo motu, that means on our own, on your own, you have to give your information. I give you an example. If it is a Karnataka State Transport Corporation, Karnataka State Transport Corporation should tell the people at what time so-and-so bus will come to bus station and at what time it will depart. This I don't know. I will not file an RTI to know when so-and-so bus will come and when does it go. I will not ask. Why should you give? No, I started for the people. Do you want me to tell? Yeah, I will not tell. Then your bus station will collapse. It will not run. So to make your bus station, bus depot successful, you must freely communicate your timetable, schedule of buses, interstate buses, national buses, district buses, local buses, all buses. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 6:30, you must. People will utilize your services if you inform them. In a different manner, the situation is the same with Government of India, Government of Karnataka, public authority like university, Mysore University, Karnataka universities, ministries, whichever is the department, whichever is the public authority, you are expected to give information to the people on your own about your basic functioning material. That's what you have to do. Suppose you are a Vigilance Commission. I don't know what is Vigilance Commissioner. What does it do? Is he a security officer? No. Then what? Now we have certain systems developed to prevent corruption, and we will verify that those systems are working in your department or not. Fine, do that. So I don't know whether you are doing it or not. First of all, I do not know what you will do. And when I come to know that this is what is a prescribed job of yours, I expect you to do that. If you don't do that, I'll ask, why are you not doing it? This is right to information. You give information on your own. If I get some doubts and if I want something more, I'll ask for it. I'll ask for some more information under RTA. This is RTA. I'll give you one example so that you understand the significance of right to information. In Pune, some of friends, while they were walking in a particular area where a new palatial building is coming up, then somebody wanted to know what is this building. They said this building is being built to accommodate President of India after her retirement. Pratibha was President of India. She was about to retire. And when she retires, she chose to live in Pune. And they, according to rules, you are to give accommodation to former President of India. Lifetime accommodation. Because first citizen, very interesting position, very important position. Then the onlookers got a doubt. Such a big palace, even after retirement? Then somebody questioned, no, we don't know what are the parameters, what are the technical specifications of the entitlement of President of India after retirement. We don't know. Then why don't you ask under RTA? Somebody filed an RTA application. They did not name anybody. They simply asked, may I know, may I have the information about the privileges, entitlements, accommodation requirements of President of India after retirement. Then short came the set of rules, copies, GOs, guidelines, etc. A set of papers came to the person. And according to the information, authentic information furnished by Government of India about the entitlement of retired president, 500 square yards plot or so-and-so square meters plinth area house. That is the entitlement of the president. But here it goes beyond that. Huge, disproportionate allocation of public resource to a retired president. Then they collected the details by another RTA application from the builders of that building, which is again a Government of India agency. And they gave what kind of a building they are coming up with and what is the area they occupied and what is the plinth area, occupation, whatever area, built area that is going to be ready for her. Then, do you know what that gentleman did? The person who collected these two informations from two different sources of through RTA. He presented it in a press conference. This is the entitlement of a retired president and this is what is happening. Simple presentation of information without abusing, accusing, alleging anything against anybody. Then what happened? The significance of the land allocated to her. The land that was given to her, which was chosen by her, is the army officers, retired army officers or young army officers welfare association land. The question is why, how can you take the land of a public utility and give it to a retired president? Next question. See, you can do that, but is it correct? Is it reasonable? See, propriety is different, reasonableness is different. If I have power to allocate 500 square yards, I'll allocate, you can't question me. But if I take away the land of a university and give it to president, you may question me, but still I have the authority. If I am allotting more than the requirement, you can question me, and because it is appropriation of public property, you should question me. Do you know what happened next? Pratibha Patil has announced in Delhi that I am not going to avail this building. Though I wanted it, I will not avail. I will go and settle for an accommodation which is acceptable under law. And she was done. I quote this as, and do you know when all this was happening, she was in seat. She was the president of India. We don't mean anything wrong to her. But I am trying to tell you that even President of India, the topmost authority of the country, is amenable to people's demand for information. It doesn't reduce the authority of the President of India, but it enhances the authority of the India. From President of India to constable that you watch near your house, do you know what are they called? What are they called? What is their designation? From President of India to constable in your vicinity. What is the designation, madam? Friends? Students?
Public servants.
Public servants. Excellent answer. Congratulations for right answer, right thinking, right expression. Public servants. What is the meaning of public servants? You know it. That's all. So you are not officer. You are not ruler. You are not king. You are a public servant. When you are a public servant, follow the norms of public servant. Act according to Constitution. Constitution. If you act according to Constitution, it will become constitutional governance. If you give me the information about the eligibility of the criteria or eligibility of the entitlement of a former president, I'm informed. And because I'm informed, I'm questioning you. What did I question you? Are you eligible to? Are you entitled to? Why are you giving such a public resource to a private person? This is how you protect your public property. This is how you conduct your governance. This is how you prevent misappropriation of public resources by a single individual. May not be a big case. Very, very small example I gave you. You may ask, sir, several scams are being committed. Several lakhs of crores of rupees of the governing money is going. Who will take care of that? So I'll ask one question to you. There are lakhs and lakhs of government offices in this country. And if each government office commits 100 rupees corruption every day, imagine the amount of money that you lose every day. And what can stop you from doing this, from prevalence of this corruption? Prevention of corruption cannot happen by the Prevention of Corruption Act 1998. You know, we have a law called Prevention of Corruption Act 1998. You tell me whether it prevents corruption. It punishes corruption. That means it will wait until corruption is committed, and then they will charge, and if charge is proved, they'll punish. Okay? But what prevents corruption? In my view, real Prevention of Corruption Act is Right to Information Act. Transparency prevents corruption. Systematic internet-based admission process prevents corruption. Do you agree with me? Everything is open. You know your merit, where do you stand, and you will be waiting for the seat. When your seniors or when the persons who are before you, if they don't get it, you will get it. That's all. No need to influence, no need to telephone, no need to bribe. You get your. I'm again giving you, I know I'm giving you a very small example, but I'm interested in giving only small examples because it happens every day in every institution, every school, every academic institution, every university, every law school, every business school. Admission is an important thing. And if there's corruption at admission level, which happens because you don't adopt a transparent system of reasonable allocation of the seats according to merit, decided by the transparent system, computerized, give no scope for corruption. That is prevention of corruption. I tell you, in our country, if a crime is committed, it is difficult to prove that crime. It is difficult to punish the criminal. The reason is investigation may not be powerful, efficient. People may not come forward to give evidence. It takes through 3 or 4 years of time in courts of law. And we are a corrupt society, dishonest society. Nobody speaks truth. So I don't expect any witness coming to the court of law and tells, yeah, I saw him committing the crime. Everybody is, who is he? I never saw him. He never did anything. He takes money and says this. Very difficult to punish. So best thing is prevent. How do you prevent? One street light is considered to be equivalent to 10 police constables. You know that? One street light. You don't ask a literal interpretation of the same. What, sir? Do you think that one street light will descend on the street with his 10 pistols and chase the thief away? No. When light is glowing, it will generate a fear complexion in thief, and he will not commit theft. Theft is prevented by glowing light in a street. Similarly, sunshine is the best disinfectant. You know what is disinfectant? In maternity hospitals, if you go and see, you will find doctor prescribing the sun bath for the just born child. Take the child into the sun. She is cured of jaundice. Not only jaundice, several infections will go. And I tell you, transparency is like sunlight, sunshine to the evil of corruption, which is a disease, cancer of democratic society. How it works, it's a very small enactment of around 32 sections, which you can easily understand. I need not explain. When it came 15 years ago, the people thought that it is a nuisance. What is this, sir? We have to do our work, and then we should also document and we should give. What is this, sir? It is not correct. My answer is to this question is, do you know how police functions? Investigating police. They have to register a complaint into FIR, and then they have to look into prima facie existence of the case. They have to go out into the streets, houses, offices, search for the documents, evidence, investigate. What is investigation? Nothing but searching for evidences. So collect all those evidences, develop a charge sheet, and send it to whom? Send it to whom?
Magistrate.
Magistrate. Every day, every case, every development in the case has to be reported to the magistrate. CRPC, if you are a law student. That means what? You do, you detect, you arrest, produce it before the magistrate. Give it to the. I tell you, you are not struggling so much, but they are doing it. Police is working so much. When police could report whatever they did regularly, why are you not in a position to report? You're an officer. Why do you say that it is a nuisance? Keep document of your activity. And if someone asks, give a copy of it, that's all. That is your job as a public information officer under Right to Information Act. Nothing more than that. And people also should know that you don't have right to ask questions. Why did you not give bail to so-and-so? Why did you give bail to so-and-so? Don't ask such questions. Because there is nobody to answer your questions. PRO is not your guide. He is not your research supervisor. He is not your teacher in in your primary school. You have lecturers. That means what? They give a lecture and go. They need not answer your questions. Not very strictly. I'm just saying, lecture means what? A person comes up with his experience in the subject which he studied for a period of time. He'll give a lecture and you have to draw from it. You can seek clarification. That's a different thing. But you can't ask for dictionary meanings, Wikipedia information. Don't ask Wikipedia information from teacher. You study it. And similarly, Right to Information Act is not for raising questions. Please understand that. Right to Information Act authorizes you to collect an authentic copy of a document which is in the file of government. That's all. Nothing more than that. Simplified. But that's very, very important. It prevents corruption. It brings down an undeserving person from the office. It changes the policies. It brings out the truth. What not it can do. What not. It did wonders during these 15 years. Wonders. I tell you one wonder, and I will conclude, then I'll give you chance for questions and answers. I'm not going to explain you each and every section of Right to Information Act, because you have to enter into that. I'll make you to enter into it. I will tell about it and you read what it is. But I'm giving you the gist of it. One fellow was trying to take away a beautiful girl from the school to his country. That means he's trying to kidnap her. And do you know what kidnappers do? They will develop a ploy of love. Love at first sight. It begins with first sight, and love develops. And he promises something and she believes innocently. And then they were planning to marry and go away out of the country. In Lucknow it happened, Uttar Pradesh capital. Then somebody said she's a school girl and this fellow is trying to kidnap her. Maybe he will be using her to trafficking. Then somebody filed a public interest litigation bill before Allahabad High Court, Lucknow bench. Lucknow bench summoned him. What is this? Do you know what he said? If she is a minor, sir, put me in jail. That is the challenge posed by the person who was a hero, teenage lover, romantic hero, teenage lover. And then a lawyer started hunting the proof of age of the girl. And for him, the tool is RTI. He found out the school of the girl, filed an RTI application at that, obtained a copy of her age certification, produced in the court of law. She is 15 to 16-year-old. And do you know what happened next? Next, he was in jail. The person who was about to kidnap is in jail. Do you know he paid 50,000 rupees bribe to police station not to book a case against him? He produced a false age certificate of that lady, that girl, as 18 years plus. When this RTI activist come advocate has exposed her age to be 15 or 16, he's finished. His bribe became ineffective. You tell me, is it not a fantastic achievement of Right to Information Act? Small, but significant in the life of a girl, in the life of a family, and a fantastic lesson to a kidnapper, a trafficker. And when I came to know about this example, when I visited Lucknow to give a lecture like this, Constitutional Governance and Transparency, similar topic. Somebody there told me this, and what a best example I can share with you. Please understand the importance of information. Information makes the government to commit to something which it has to do. And you can question when it is not being done. Questioning happens not under RTI. Your future question will be strengthened with RTI. So it's a questioning power again. You get the information like that President Pune RTI activist, get the information and then question. Get the information and then confront. So securing information itself is a significant one, but it doesn't stop there. You have the information in your hand, empower yourself, inform yourself. Informed citizenry is the is the protection to the society. Informed citizenry, enlightened citizenry, questioning citizenry. When I say citizen, I mean citizen. I don't mean subject. I don't mean consumer. I don't mean a taxed person. No, I mean a citizen. A citizen is conscious citizen, informed citizen, enlightened, empowered citizen. Right to Information Act empowers you, informs you, enlightens you. And I wish all of you become enlightened citizens, empowered citizens by using RTI, by using your liberty of thinking, by using wonderful freedom of speech and expression. Take part in the decision-making process of democratic governance of this country according to Constitution. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful insight about information and transparency and how they're interlinked with each other and what is the practical aspect and how it actually works in the real world. Now the floor is open for questions. You can ask sir yourself. You can use the raise hand features or put it in the chat box.
Make it very specific and
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
I have two questions, sir. Both are interconnected. Can I go ahead with the question?
Yeah.
In 2013, sir, 6 political parties were held as public authority. And subsequently, we saw that several RTI applications were filed for disclosure of internal meeting and funding, sir. But we saw that they were denied on the grounds that the information was private and it belonged to a third party, being the donor, sir. So how do we ensure compliance? Now, my second question being, in the 2019, we saw another decision from the commissioner that held that electoral bonds need not be made public because it's not for the public interest at large. It also violates the right to privacy of the donor, sir. So what's your opinion on the same, considering the fact that these funds are being utilized for public functions, sir, like rally and campaign?
Mr. Akash Thakur, your opinion is my opinion.
If you
I know you have an opinion to ask this question, and I agree with you. Any other question?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, the Whistleblowers Act provides the protection wherein the identity of the whistleblower will not be revealed. It will be kept confidential. Can we expect a similar provision in the RTI? Because lately, after the enactment of this enactment, we have seen many cases wherein there is a threat to the life of the informant. So can we expect some anonymous filing of the application? Because we feel that state is compromising on the personal liberty of an individual. Though we say right to information forms the part of Article 21, Article 19, Clause 1, Clause A, somewhere we feel that individuals feel threat or abused when they seek information. So do you think there must be an amendment which provides for concealing the identity of the applicant?
You should have read the process of developing this draft, and you should have read at least 2 or 3 sections of Right to Information Act. You will not ask this question. The reason is Section 6 was fought by the people and it was brought into the enactment. Section 6 says a person who is asking for information need not disclose his name, and it is provided for in the Right to Information Act. It is already provided. There is no need to amend. 2005 Act says that you need not disclose your name, identity. It is enough if you give what information you want and where this information has to be delivered. That is one thing. Second is whistleblowers protection is important. I support that point, but the seeker of information under RTI is not included in the definition of whistleblower. He should have been included. You should ask for that. That will, to some extent rather, help the people to face the threats, to prevent the threats. I tell you one more thing. Even in Whistleblowers Act, you have to make a specific request not to disclose your identity. Similarly, the RTI requesters also can say that they can create a postbox and say that who created this postbox should be kept confidential. and information can be put in the post box. We'll collect it. And it is the duty of the public authority to give that information. So if you don't want to reveal your name, there is a provision. And in fact, I suggest all the RTI activists who are asking for dangerous information, I mean, risky information, they need not disclose their name. They can simply create an address where it can be posted.
Sir, good evening, sir. Is it
Yeah.
audible, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, you spoke about freedom of speech and expression, no, sir. When that freedom of speech and expression is being exercised, the sedition is coming into picture because that is what has been happening in case of Raghuram Krishnamraju, TV5 and ABN, sir. So what is your say on this? And
Not
I
only
have
on
one more
this,
question, sir.
There are thousands of people against whom sedition is charged.
Yes, sir.
Thousands
So,
of cases.
and
Thousands of cases. It is not correct. It is misuse of sedition. Supreme Court said it.
And one more question I have, sir. The very yesterday, the right to information plea was rejected by the Home Ministry officials with regard to Visakhapatnam privatization of steel plants, sir. Sir, if this is the attitude being portrayed by the officials of central government, how can transparency be incorporated more stringently, sir?
By filing several RTA applications. You have to keep on asking. You must create a culture in the government public authorities to give information. They are hesitating. They don't want to give. They have something to hide. And you must keep on fighting. You must keep on fighting. And for the political parties question also, I'd like to tell you, when 6 political parties are declared as public authorities, do you know how many RTA questions were there? It's a shame on this lack of questioning.
Initially, there were only 2, sir.
30, just 30. And 30 emerged into second appeals, and they were before me. And political parties do not want to disclose the information. You are not ready to ask information from political parties. You're not ready to ask information about political parties from Election Commission. The greatest drawback in our country is that people are not using RTA. That is my point. If you want to protect your freedom of speech and expression, do you want to protect it? Do you want to protect it? I'm asking you, Mr. Shreyas. You want?
Yes,
no?
sir. Yes, sir.
How do you protect it? Tell me. You want?
Sir, as you said,
you need a
raising
gun?
questions. Raising questions.
Yeah, you need a machine gun, or you need police power, protection, or what do you want to protect freedom of speech and expression?
No, sir. No, sir. My question is,
No, I'm asking you generally.
when Raghuram Krishnamraju.
My question to you is, how do you protect your freedom of speech and expression? My general question, simple question to you. I'm interacting with you.
Yes, sir. Expressing our speeches and exercising.
By AK-47?
No, sir.
And then why what?
So raising questions and being as we are.
Keep talking. Don't abuse anybody. Keep talking. Keep raising your voice. Use all fora available. Twitter, Facebook, social media, other social media. Small meetings like this. Raise questions. I gave you 2 or 3 examples where the government has to take a U-turn. So I know, see, nobody is ready to give you information. Nobody is ready to expose himself. You tell me, will anybody come out and say, yeah, I have taken away 1,000 crores from the treasury of Indian government? Can anybody say that? Nobody will. Will you ask a question? Mr. X, you please tell me whether Mr. Y has taken 1,000 crore from the treasury of India. Can you ask such a question? You cannot, you should not. So you have to strategize your participation as a citizen. You have to strategize your opinion building. You have to be in association with the people to secure your life. You should file anonymous, as Vedashri has questioned you. You have to file the anonymous RT applications, get the information, raise the question in a forum, form some strong association of young men, then you can fight, you can survive, and you will be recognized, and you will become an important person. Freedom of speech and expression will be protected by exercising freedom of speech and expression. RTI will be protected by using RTI. Constitution will be protected by using the Constitution. Do you repair your machine gun? Do you repair your typewriter? Do you repair your system, laptop? Do you update it? Do you clean it? You have to do the same with the system. Clean it, update it, use it, replace it. When it is useless.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, you spoke about the advantages of RTI and how it is an important tool. But at the same time, we can see disadvantage where, like, as you said, only people who are working in the public sector will ask for information and not
No,
a
that
normal
was only
citizen
first
will
year.
ask.
That was only in first year. Latter, 1 crore, 2 crore, 3 crore people asked for information about public authorities. I just gave you the example of
Sir,
first
but
year.
we still see that it is being misused. Like retired public officials will ask for information, and we can see that there's scope for corruption there. So, is there any way to avoid such things?
See, we are such a society that we misuse everything. I agree with you. There is misuse. But you tell me, because 2% or 4% are misusing, shall we take away the RTI? Should we? Freedom of speech also is being misused to incite violence or to develop hate speech or to create conflicts, communal conflicts. Should we abolish freedom of speech and expression? See, misuse, you have to tackle it, that's all. I agree with you that you have to tackle misuse, please tackle it. Expose that it is being misused. If he's blackmailing, complain and get him arrested. Don't allow misuse. And answer to misuse is proficient, proper use is the answer to misuse. Okay?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, one feeble voice. I could not hear.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, am I audible? So my question is regarding your experience as an author. So what does it take to write a book? So what is your suggestion to the budding authors, sir?
Yeah, that's a good question. First, you have to ask several questions to yourself. And these are the questions of the readers. Because you are a reader. Once you know the reader's questions, start answering them. At the end of it, you write a book. That's a book. So readers' questions should be answered by the author. For that, author has to raise readers' questions. That will result in a book.
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah.
Sir, you talked about purpose of the constitution is democratic nation, and our constitution tries to avoid power vested on one person and distributed among different departments. But in reality, poverty, helplessness, and illiteracy is leading to concentration of power to single department. For example, in various PDOs and police departments. What is the solution in your opinion?
Solution is education. Solution is education. Solution is creating consciousness. Solution is providing them necessary thinking power. Solution is literacy. Literacy is solution.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Sir, don't you think that the judiciary is exceeding its limits in encroaching the field of executive and the legislature?
Are you from executive?
No. I am faculty of Genesis Law College.
So, generally, executive will ask this question. That's why I thought you are an executive. Now, my question to you is, can executive exceed the limits of executive powers?
No, as per the terms of the constitution, no.
It is my
No,
question.
no, any organ for that matter can't encroach the field of others. No.
Excellent. You gave the answer.
No, the way in which they are dealing with, as you said in Farm Bill, the court took that
You
action
are
and
a
CA, they
teacher.
told that. But, yes, sir.
You are a teacher.
Yes, sir, definitely. Yes, sure.
General comment is not a question.
Hmm.
General comment is never a question.
Yes,
When you concluded that they are exceeding the limits, I have nothing to say. Maybe you are researcher and you found out there are in dozen cases judiciary has exceeded. Yeah, maybe you are right in those two cases. But in my view, in my view, judiciary is not at all performing its duty in most of the cases. So I don't agree with you when you say exceeding the limit. It is far within the limits.
No. The way in which it's functioning of late, naturally for all those people who are very much following that, they feel that it is exceeding his limit in the sense, encroaching the field of the executive.
I disprove your statement because I follow every day judicial pronouncements, and I feel
recently
they are not performing their duty.
No, recently there was an article written by another expert on constitutional law, Subhash Kashyap. He also made it clear that somewhere it is exceeding its limit.
Somewhere means
that's why I asked you.
Somewhere means what? Kya baat hai?
Somewhere means, for example, maybe it may be
if
in
it is somewhere,
CA
don't
or
discuss. If
in
it is somewhere,
farmland.
I don't discuss. If it is somewhere, I am not bothered. See, opinions are
Okay, sir, thank you.
Opinions are okay, but it is not correct statement. Judiciary is not exceeding its limits. Judiciary has to perform its duty. You must allow it to perform.
So that is your view, no, sir?
That's it. You said your view and I am saying my view. Do you want me to tell your view, yeah?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
No. That is not the case.
Your view as my view, you will become a media person.
Sir.
Okay, take it as a discussion. Don't get hurt.
No. There is no question of getting hurt. Just I express my opinion on the way in which the Supreme Court is functioning.
I tell you, sir, in some cases, you may be right. But in most of the cases, I'll give you the example. A magistrate has to question if a false case of sedition is booked. Is he performing his duty? In my view, exceeding limit is not dangerous. Not performing duty. That is my view. You understand the point I'm trying to make. I want to draw you to this, but you dropped in between, you know. That's why I could not do anything. I was drawing to you this point.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
I require clarification on section 6, subsection 3, sir, of the Right to Information Act 2005. When an application is made to the public authority, if that authority doesn't have an information, it can transfer it to the other public authority. How to interpret this word other public authority, sir? Because in as far as some of the practical applications are concerned, if one authority has so many sub-authorities, it says to the other public authority. Is there a need for interpretation, sir?
There are thousands of judgments on this, thousands. And I'm telling you, you must listen to me now.
Yes, sir.
See, if a different desk is having the information, the PIO has to collect it from the different desk within the office and give the information. Suppose I am possessing information supplied by police department. I am a law department. I have the information furnished by police department. And I think that police department's information may not be given by me unless I consult the other or I ask or I transfer that application to them. Because the information came to me, I endorsed it and it went back to the police department. So I only have a mention somewhere that so-and-so file came to me and it went back to that department. Then I tell my right seeker that this information has came to me and then went back to the department. So I am transferring it to that. You collect it from there, or they will give it to you. That's what I say. This is other public authority, because public authorities interact, exchange information within them.
But
there is a provision for transferring it.
So, sir, is it practically happening is the issue? Because in Karnataka,
practically many things happen. Practically transfer is properly being done.
Yes.
Sometimes they are simply transferring only to harass.
That is what.
So, that is not everywhere, yeah. That is happening. But what you have to do is, wherever it happens, you have to raise it, question it, fight it, and get it. Fighting is constant. It doesn't change.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Now I call upon Ms. Kajal Prasad to render the vote of thanks.
Huh?
Vote of thanks for me.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akshay. Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure in thanking our special guest, Dr. Madhubushi Sridhar.
Sir,
yes.
Excuse me. Good evening, sir.
They announced it is over and they are proceeded with vote of thanks.
The last question, sir.
You take their permission to ask me.
Sir, can I ask?
Okay, sir. One last question. Quickly accepted. Go ahead.
Very quickly.
Sir, don't you think somewhere RTI authority is misusing the statutory time period, sir?
They are exceeding. They are exceeding. But my suggestion to you is, in times of pandemic or because of some problem, they exceed. Don't worry about it. But keep them reminding.
Sir, even in normal.
That they give information. That's my suggestion. Suppose instead of giving in 30 days, they gave in 35 days. Ignore it. Giving information is important, but raise a question. Even before you ignore it, say that, sir, you have delayed by 5 days. Please don't do it hereafter. Bolke ek letter likhna, then chhod dena.
Okay. That's what happening, sir. In a post office, we gave, like, we have asked him. So they have the information within 2 days they can give, but they wait
that's
for
not correct. You know, well, you're right. What law says is, as soon as possible, not beyond 30 days. That is the language. So they need not wait for 30 days. They should give within 30 days. In my view, they should give within 3 days. Maximum 3 days.
We will no longer be taking any questions. Proceeding towards the vote of thanks. Good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure in thanking our special guest, Dr. Madhubushi Sridhar Acharyalu, for accepting our invitation, gracing us with his virtual presence, interacting with the participants, and providing us with such valuable insights. Thank you very much, sir. We are truly obliged to Professor K.S. Suresh, Chief Executive of JSS Law College, and Dr. Nataraju, who is the Principal of JSS Law College, for always providing us with such learning opportunities. I extend my gratitude to Mr. Pranav Nair and Ms. Sneha Jagdish, Assistant Professors, and the faculty coordinators for organizing this informational webinars for all of us, and Mr. Madhukumar Sir for all of his technical assistance. I thank the student coordinators who have been instrumental in the success of this program. Last but not least, I thank all the students and everyone else who have attended this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nataraju Garu. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.